And welcome to the Financial FUTURECAST with me, your cosmic coach, Maurielle Laurenne, and host of this masterclass. And I'm joined today by financial professional Brett Harmeling, the Vice President of Collaboration Capital. And in this class today, we are going to learn about the energy of money, as well as discuss the current 2020 economic climate. And we're going to get some guidance on the top things that we should be doing with our money right now. And so, Brett, thank you so much for being the expert with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me, and look forward to covering some really interesting topics and content. And I want to just first of all acknowledge everyone for being on this call. Money is one of those things that can be really challenging whether you have it or don't. And so thank you for just taking the leap of faith and joining us today. I promise that you'll leave here today feeling empowered around the concept of money.
Yeah. Well, Brett, I couldn't imagine anyone more perfect in their expertise to guide us in this discussion than you. So we're privileged to have you on. And so let's give everyone a quick overview before we dive into the topic today of who you and I both are, the spheres that we come from, and how we can contribute knowledge to today's topic. So most of you on this call know the both of us, but for those of you who don't, I'm Maurielle Laurenne, and the simplest way to describe what I do is that it's my job to help people answer the question, what should I be doing with my life and my business? So as a coach, I help people understand themselves, their relationships, and their careers so they can be integrated around a central purpose. And I have spent over 10 years now in the coaching industry. I started out with a small boutique consulting firm here in my local hometown, Houston, Texas, where my typical client was a Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 CEO in the building industry, or the private equity funds from Wall Street that invest in built infrastructure. So most of my clients came from high levels of the design, construction, and engineering world and the sovereign wealth funds that finance those types of building projects. Just to give you kind of a perspective, most of my clients, their average deal was between $50 and $250 million. So my background started there, and along the way, working with lots of these powerful leaders, I started to see that what led to either success or failure in the boardroom had a lot to do with things that were going on beyond just what was going on in their career. I started to see that really what led to success or failure also had to do with what was going on in their family life, what was going on in their relationships, what was going on with their health, what was going on with their mental perspective. And that really contributed or took away from what they were able to deliver in the boardroom. So along my journey, I began studying lots of different psychological and self-development techniques to try to understand how I could help these ambitious professionals be even more successful. And so, you know, I'm sure like most of you listening, you get into Tony Robbins and Brené Brown, you start studying different elements of personal discovery and spirituality, whether it's Christian mysticism or Buddhism. I finally found the astrological technique, and I loved it because it's mathematically based. And so for me, coming from a really strong business and finance background, I loved that math and statistics tell a story. And so I had an apprenticeship for 3 years, learning the astrological technique and figuring out how I could apply it to business situations with my clients. And so fast forward to today, where I have my own personal consulting brand, and I incorporate the astrological technique into how we look at the careers and lives and businesses of powerful professionals from all different sorts of industries. And I'm so excited to say that my My crowning moment in the original consulting firm was that I did make partner before the age of 30. So I was the youngest person and only female to ever make partner in the firm. And I still, to this day, own a percentage equity in that company. And I'm very proud because they are a Houston local company. And as for my personal coaching that I do, I have been named by Voyage Houston magazine as a trailblazer in business. I was also rated one of the top 20 small business entrepreneurs in Houston, and most recently was interviewed on Channel 26 News. So that being said, I meet so many competent professionals in various industries that have knowledge that can help everyone. And so my purpose in creating this masterclass series, of which today's is just the first of many more to come, because I wanted to showcase my clients and partners and their expertise for all of us, for the benefit of our community, to see how we could improve our lives, especially since 2020 is such a transitioning year for all of us. And so gratefully, Brett agreed to be the first co-host of our masterclass series. And today we are going to focus on the big question on everybody's mind, which is what should we be doing with our money right now? And how do we respond safely to these economic circumstances? So Brett, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your professional experience, to give context on how you have the knowledge that you're going to share with us today. And in order to do that, would you mind if I tried something from one of our coaching sessions?
Let's do it.
Okay, so for all of you watching, you probably know very well that what I'm referring to is I want to take a look at Brett's life path chart. Now, Brett, of course, has kindly disclosed to me before this discussion his birth date, birth time, and birth location, which are the necessary ingredients to get the appropriate mathematical coordinates to create a map, to create a chart. So I do have those on hand, and I've taken a look at things, and very briefly, I want to describe Brett's life through the story of his chart, and then let's hear Brett fill in the resume from there. So Brett, with your permission and me looking at your life path chart, I'd like to dive into who you are and how you got to where we are today. Does that work for you?
Yeah, let's do it. And full disclosure to all those listening, I've actually never seen this before. So.
He's actually never seen the map. So Brett, the first thing that I see in your chart, I'm looking at it on my screen, is that in your life, your purpose is that you're here to create, to heal, and to serve. And so this means that from your childhood all the way into adulthood, you may notice that these themes permeate both your relationships, your activities and hobbies, and certainly your career choice. So it could be that you see yourself as a creator or an entrepreneur or the one who invents things and presents them in a way that's never been done before. And you may also, in some respects, see yourself as a healer, whether we think of that traditionally, like someone who, say, perhaps works in medicine, or someone who heals and resolves a dysfunctional way that something in business or society is traditionally done. And it could also be that you see yourself as a servant or disciple of the people that you are dedicated to. You serve through your leadership. And this shows up in the area of your life path chart that deals with information and data, homes and families. So it could be that you do a lot of this creating, healing, and serving because you become privy to critical data and information that helps people in not just probably them individually, but maybe even work with their families or extended families and friends and generations. And it connects to this area of your life that's associated with wealth building. So what you're doing with this data and information that you're creating through something and you're bringing healing to how it's been traditionally done, and you do it through servant leadership, allows you to not only personally build wealth, but probably involves wealth building for your clients and customers. The other thing that I see that's really strong in your life path chart is that your method, your style, your approach is that you do this through building a business or working in or influencing government and policy. So part of your style could be that you build a business around this idea of creating healing and serving people through specific information that helps them and their families in some kind of wealth building capacity. And it could also be that maybe at some point in your life or career, you work for a government type institution that does this, or you become someone who is able to influence those types of policies in a really positive way. The other thing that I will say before finishing this too, is that the way you make your mark on society seems to be through relationships and money. So it could be that a lot of the way that you build this business and connect with clients is actually through friendships and through referral and word of mouth, because your treasured relationships are really strong and people trust you. And it could also be that maybe something in your business has to do with money, whether directly, meaning you or your product or service actually involves money, or has a really profound financial impact on the people who receive it. So with that being said, Brett, I have to admit to our audience, of course, that I have the great privilege of knowing quite a lot about you already, which is why you are one of our masterclass teachers here today. So I know enough about your history, and I want you to share with everyone, how did you go from what was originally a farm all the way into big city finance where you are now?
Thank you for sharing that with me, Maurielle. That was pretty enlightening and pretty interesting considering where I'm at now. So yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I grew up in a small village called Oostburg, and I grew up on a farm. I'm one of five, and I have amazing parents who really taught me responsibility and discipline my whole life. And so the second I left the village, per se, of Oostburg, I went to college and then navigated into Chicago, where I started my career as a real estate broker and technology professional. These career paths were exciting, and I knew I could make a big mark and generate a lot of wealth doing those things. However, something was missing. Something inside of me was missing, and so I ended up actually taking a position to run a specialty chemical company down here in Houston in 2012. And during that opportunity, really tested all the skills and the leadership things that I've practiced over the course of my whole lifetime. From being a small kid, I always had this little engine that could mentality. Like, Brett was never the kid that was going to make it. He was never going to be the one that was going to be on TV. He was never going to be the one that was, first team all conference, et cetera, those kind of things. And yet time and time again, just with my discipline and with all the tools that I had been given, I was able to grow this company, and we sold it. We got acquired because we took too much market share in the industry. And so that left me once again with a hole in my heart. So it was a good thing. It was a cool success story, but at the same time, I felt empty. And so my next phase led me into doing some cyber intelligence stuff, which got really interesting really quick. I was involved in government agencies and organizations doing intel and human analytics on a global scale. It was really a unique career path, to say the least. Once my 18-month contract had ended, I knew that I wanted to align my life with a partner and start getting serious about having a family, and taking 97 flights in a year's time just doesn't equal that. And so I needed to make a hard decision, and I phased out of that. And I was meeting with my first ever financial advisor here in Houston with White Rhino Financial. And, I was going through that period of time where I was recalibrating, kind of trying to understand where life was going to take me next. And I was like, instead of waiting for life to show me what's next, why don't I just step into creating it? And he asked me, have you ever considered being a financial advisor? You're really smart. You you understand economics like most people don't, because you understand the behaviors of it, the psychology of it, which is actually the most important thing, because people can go online and in the news and share certain projections or opinions, and it's just like, it doesn't have any meaning because it doesn't have data behind it. It's just what someone thinks, which is cool, because the reason that we are so unique as humans is that we all entitled to our opinion. And so what led me to this path is, this career demands a professional that cares about people on a level that not many people have the energy to do. It requires someone that is disciplined and dedicated to ongoing education and learning and getting licensed. It requires a team player, and it requires someone that is trustworthy first and foremost. And so with those things being really serious qualifiers for this industry, I decided I'm a man of integrity and I stand behind what I believe, and so I'm going to try it out. Well, if any of you have tried out being a financial advisor in your lifetime, you have a lot of sympathy for me right now, because your first couple of years doing it is extraordinarily challenging. You're asking people to share their money stories with you, and then you're holding space for them to listen to advice to someone that just got into a new industry. And so it really excited me, and it really challenges me every day. And I know that I'm the type of dynamic professional that will always evolve with where the world's going. And I think that my greatest skill set is that I've aggregated talent across the financial services community instead of just becoming the expert and the go-to person. So I've aggregated these talent modules across the city. And so anybody that needs specific services for whatever it is they're going through in life, I have trusted relationships already built out. You could Google or get lucky to find a really good financial professional, but the kind of people that I work with put clients first and products second. And so that's how I ended up where I'm at, and that's why I'm very aligned in the path that, like, I'm not surprised based on what you said about my reading, is that I'm sitting here as the Vice President of Collaboration Capital today.
Well, I think, Brett, your life story seems to fit your life path chart pretty accurately, and I love seeing the alignment there. So you're on the right track, absolutely. And with that, Brett, if you're ready, we have a course curriculum today that we had wanted to dive into. And so I think let's begin here. Give us your insight, first of all, on how long, right, this sort of experience, if we want to call it a recession or this downturn, might last. How long do those types of things typically go on? And what do you think kind of about the 2020 timeline? Because we also have to acknowledge that while we may have experienced economic downturns in the past, that each one is individual. So the past doesn't necessarily equate the future, but there could be some similarities. So can you start by giving us a bit of a framework there?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's just important to understand like what a downturn or recession means in the financial world. And what by definition, it is 2 consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. GDP stands for gross domestic product. And so when you see 2 consecutive quarters put together, so 6 months, which isn't that long of time, but when you see that happening, you start to know that there is economic indicators saying that we are in a downturn. So there's actually been notably there's been 47 actual recessions in the history of the United States, which may be like, wow, I didn't even realize that. That's because most people either weren't aware that it even happened, or they didn't have data, like enough data to like where they did anything different with their money or their career. And so 17 of those 47 are like quite notable, meaning like people definitely felt the pressure of them. But the thing to keep in mind with the current situation that we're going through right now, it hasn't really been that long, but the reason that it's somewhat scary or challenging for a lot of people is because the curve is so sharp. We've never seen this happen. Even like the Great Depression was worse than what we're going through right now in terms of it lasted longer, but we are yet to determine the timeline of what has happened right now because of the broad spread downturn in the economy across several different industries globally.
Thank you for clarifying the nuances of those definitions, because I think that those are words, like buzzwords, that get tossed around, on the media, and a lot of times we recognize the word, but we don't really know what it means. So having that clarity is important. I would like to add to what you said about the special nature of this particular downturn that we're experiencing in 2020. From my perspective, what I see when I look at, the life path chart, particularly of the United States, is it's very interesting, because coming up here in 2020 is the US is doing something that it essentially hasn't done in about 250 years. So cyclically, in the chart of the United States of America, our power factor, Pluto, is coming to its return station. And this happens about only every 247 to 250 years. So it means that in some sense, whether you want to call it kind of like a psychological sense, that our country is coming back to question some of the values and foundations that were important at its inception. And we're in some way trying to reconfigure and redefine that. And where this particularly takes place for the United States, interestingly enough, is that this reassessment of power happens in the money sector of the chart of the United States. So that means that the stage upon which we are going to reassess these values and realign ourselves will be an economic one. And that I don't think we can overlook the seriousness of this particular transit as truly a history-defining moment, because we are at a crossroads that hasn't occurred in our country since its inception about 250 years ago. So what I would also like to say, Brett, is you were talking about this experience from past downturns and what it means. So what are some of the biggest lessons learned that we could take from that and apply it to our current situation? So that could be a lesson on success, and that might also be some of the failures that have happened in the past and how we could sidestep that in our present circumstance.
Yeah, that's a great question, Maurielle. And what I want to communicate clearly is that it comes down to dynamic planning. Oftentimes in the past, especially, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember this, you go in to meet with a financial planner and you leave with a book, and you're supposed to go do all these things with the book, like implement different stock strategies, buy this insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Well, literally within an hour of you leaving that office, that plan is out of date. And so what you really want to make sure that you have present and moving forward in your life is that you have a plan that's in place that's dynamic. It's growing, it's evolving, it's changing. It's designed to support you, your family, your legacy, whatever organizations you care about, to navigate through whatever it is. The way that I say it is, it'll help you grow through whatever you go through. And that's why it's important to align with professionals that have your best interest, that understand your goals, but also has a little bit of a pulse on the economy.
Could you give us some insight too for maybe people who they're like first-time investors, or they're just beginning to get their financial plan in order? Some people watching are experienced professionals who probably already have a plan and a portfolio, but some people watching might be younger and earlier in their career, and this could actually be their first time. Maybe they're just used to getting their paycheck and putting it in a bank account, and they've got checking and savings, and they think that that's it. So in a time like this, which could be a scary time, maybe for some people to consider broaching this topic, especially if it's their first attempt, what advice would you give for those folks who kind of like know that this is something they should do, but it feels a little intimidating and they're wanting to know if it's the right time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the biggest thing that comes down to the psychology of money. And so if you want to write this down in the chat, or we can send it to you after, my acronym for money is actually my own natural energy yield. Once again, money equals my own natural energy yield. And the reason that I say this is that so often, whether I'm working with a higher net worth client or someone that's new to money, the common theme of like money is never going to fix a broken mindset. And so if you can't understand your money as energy, meaning like if you upgrade your own energy and you're aligning with people that are making a difference, thought leaders, change makers, game changers, whatever you want to call these kind of people, chances are you're feeling more and more empowered to make those same decisions that you are yourself. And so being a part of communities that support you and thriving in your own environment helps you actually draw more abundance into your life. And so when you have when you see money through the lens of scarcity, or I don't want to talk about it because I'm not in a place where I have enough money to talk to a financial advisor, or all those tapes that you may have played in your head about your past, likely every single one of us here has a story about money that our parents unintentionally gave us. It could be good, it could be bad. I'm sure it's a blend of both. And the truth is we live in a very different world than when our parents were giving us financial advice. And so step one is really just getting clear on your spending habits and understanding your relationship with money and what it's like doing for you. Like I always teach people, and this is a hard concept to grasp, but like your money is actually not yours. Like you're borrowing it to do something in the world with and make a positive impact. Now, myself included, obviously we all make mistakes with our money and spend it on things that we don't value. But if we can recalibrate and refocus, and literally every time you pull that card out, are you spending money? Like I ask myself every time I pull my card out, am I spending money on, is this something that I actually value? And if it is, then it's worth it. Like no financial advisor could ever tell you not to buy something. But then there's finding that unique balance of how much can I save? What am I spending? Am I focusing that money towards things I value? Because the flip side of the coin is the more that you get to save, the more that you can grow. And that just produces that stability, kind of that financial framework that feels good. And it like helps you live life and do the things that you really want to do.
Right. I love the concept of money as an energy. Wow. That is so eloquently put. I don't think I've ever heard anyone else in the industry describe it in quite that way. And like you said, my own energy yield, what a great way to remember it. I think it takes a bit of the fear factor out of money, right? Like, do you find when clients first come to you that maybe there is a bit of a fear factor in discussing this topic, either because they don't know enough about it, or they're afraid of being taken advantage of, or they're afraid of even being judged, right? Like, maybe they think, oh my gosh, I don't want someone to look at my finances, they're gonna judge me. So the way you describe it, I think, is when we focus on money as a part of our energy, it makes us feel more confident about taking action with our money around our values, as well as sharing that with other people, and including confidence in getting qualified advice from others about this topic that should be something that's really special to us, right?
Absolutely. And just to touch on one point with that, because you say the word trust, and what people that are going into the money game need to really understand is what a fiduciary is. And those are the kind of individuals, the only kind of individuals that I will refer people to. Fiduciaries in the financial world have 100% commitment in the best interest of the client. And so there are certain companies, like a lot actually still, where an advisor will go work for that company and they will get a paycheck from that company to sell their products. Well, what if there was 18 other products over here in the world of financial planning and services that you wanted to look at that you don't know about because your advisor that you trusted was only able to sell this handful of products? And so that's the approach that me and my team take, is we take this broad, widespread, holistic view of everything that's going on so we can make the best recommendations, because I don't have any attachment to what product it is that I place. Now, I do work for a company called Collaboration Capital, and our main purpose is to help people align their investments with their values. So this would not be a holistic financial plan. However, it's one unique thing that you get to do when you have money to invest.
So, how you were saying advisors such as yourself, especially fiduciaries, have seen the market change a lot over time. when you look at past historical cycles of the economy, like when it's gone down, is there any insight, like ways that people have made mistakes maybe in the past? Like last time there was a downturn, you saw a trend that didn't turn out well. People shouldn't have done that with their money. Or did you see that there were also maybe some signs of success? Like surprisingly, in a downturn, when somebody did this with their money, it actually turned out well for them. And how could we relate that to what's going on right now? How could we put that into our strategies?
Excellent question. The most important thing to highlight about past recessions, I've personally I've been in the industry roughly 5 years now. And so I'm fairly new. However, I've really thrown myself into the fire to learn and understand and uncover all the things and the moving pieces of it. But the most important thing to understand about any recession or any hard or good situation is that if you don't have a plan and a foundation to work from, there's a very good probability that behaviorally, even if you think you're doing something that's in the best interest of your money situation or your money plan, you may make an unconsciously bad decision with that money. And so it's always nice to have trained professionals, like my team of analysts literally study the market every single day. They don't talk to people, they're not in meetings, but they need to do that so that our products have so much integrity that when the deliverable actually comes to the client is happy and can see growth and can understand why they're invested in that product to begin with.
So you would say that one of the mistakes you've seen people historically make in the past is, especially in crisis, because we're often working from fear in that moment, is people think they're going to figure it out themselves, right? And then they don't seek the help of a trained professional to guide them through that.
Yeah, and it plays into the same concept that I'll touch on again, is that it's not your money. And so if you can work with a professional to detach that part of you that's so attached to all the money that you have and the wealth and all the good stuff, then you get to look at your money in a different way, and a resource of like, this is my stability, this is my foundation, this is my means by which I get to eat and build and thrive build my body off of and travel and explore the world with. And so I believe, and I've heard it said by a lot of the people that I do business with, the number one, like no one financial decision's probably going to ruin your life financially. However, it's the behavior of all those decisions and like the way that you interact with money that actually creates big disruption in missing out on those growth cycles. Right now, my clients are doing nothing. Our investment philosophy has not changed unless there's an extreme situation within a family that I'm working with.
Yeah, I love that. And so what I would like to hear from you as well is, so what you're saying is sometimes it's more of our psychology about money in the first place that can get in our way, right?
100%.
To clarify. And that the biggest mistake is when people simply don't take action on doing something, even if it's small at first, with their money and getting the guidance that they need to do that safely. So then in the current economic climate, if anyone is sitting there thinking, okay, I'm nervous when I turn on the television and I see what's happening in the market out there, is this still a good time to get started, right? Even if it's small, it's a good time to get started. Is that also what I hear you saying?
Yeah, I think like day by day, the longer that you wait to step into like abundance, like let's say you have $20,000 in credit card debt and you're just so afraid to even look at it that like you're worried about what's going to happen if you don't know what to do, so you feel stuck, and then you make other poor decisions, and then you actually make your situation way worse. Or if you're on the other side of the coin and you're invested across many different asset classes and many different equities and just different investment vehicles, you have this unique thing that happens when everyone wants your attention when the economy is good. However, when it's not, now is the time where people are going to try to distract you and get you doing things that you would have never done with your money. So if you have a really good plan and a team to reflect information off of, chances are you're going to keep the ball moving forward, even if your money is taking a hit, which anybody that's invested in the market, like right now in any type of plan, obviously, I mean, it's public information. You can see the stock, you can see what's happened. And so the markets have taken a hit, and we are going through a very hard time. And so it's important to know that discipline usually determines the outcome. And you think about discipline being like a diet, which is not healthy. My wife is a dietitian, and she teaches people the intuitive understanding of what you put in your mouth. It's not about being on a set diet to fix a problem. It's about navigating through day by day life, how you think and feel about food. Well, it's the same with money, right? It's the same with money. It's like, how is my relationship with money going to affect the outcome of my money plan? And I look at discipline like railroad tracks, right? Some people look at it like it's suppressing you and holding you back. I look at it like, instead of going outside of the railroad tracks, it actually pushes you forward into a future that you may not have ever been able to experience.
I love that. So before we go on to the next section, what I'm hearing you say, the high points are: money is an energy, and it is our own natural energy yield. And we should act as soon as possible to begin investing and saving, even if it's small to begin with, and to have the confidence to get advice and not feel afraid of the topic with qualified professionals. And that even in an economic downturn like this, probably one of the biggest mistakes you've seen people make is just in general not getting started, right? So pretty much everyone, today, with either if they have something or if they don't, we need to get started, and we need to take action on saving and investing, and to do it with the right team, and to also not live in fear because of what we see happening in the marketplace around us, because we could also miss an opportunity to grow our abundance if we wait out of fear. Is that right, Brett?
I believe that is correct.
So another question I have is, as we're watching the current economic situation play out, what are some of the indicators that people should watch for when they know that it's really going to be safe to start investing at a higher level again? And what are some of the indicators that might tell us that things are kind of on an upturn?
Well, you can look at different industries and kind of gauge with your own economic perspective. We all have different things that we really value and care about, but just in general, just watching, just getting information that's real versus biased is really important. And like, one thing that's positive that's happening because of COVID is it's forcing us as humans to look at things like money that we likely have taken our eyes off of. And these blind spots are usually actually where the greatest opportunity for growth occurs.
I think that is so true, because a lot of us in the stress of the situation are asking in our minds and in our hearts, what is the wisdom that can be gained from this crisis? What is the positivity that could come from something like this? And I think, as you said, one of the tough things is this crisis has forced us to look at areas of our lives that normally we push under the rug, or we delay looking at and taking action on, such as money being one of them. And it's allowing us the opportunity to finally open up and confront and address and take control of those things. And so it might feel a little uncomfortable or just unfamiliar at first, but in reality, it's making us more of a whole person, because we're bringing in all the necessary aspects of our life and our values to feel whole and complete, instead of kind of pushing certain things under the rug just because we're like, either I don't know or it makes me uncomfortable. So I love how you brought that to the forefront. And you said too, making sure that we're watching and listening to real information that comes from qualified sources. So who are some of the people that you follow in the economy and in the marketplace, whether it's certain news channels or certain professionals, thought leaders? Who could we be listening to and tune into to get the right information?
That's a great question. So depending on, this is a tricky one to answer, because everyone has their own preferences, whether it be a certain sector or a certain affiliation. And so everyone has their own opinions on where to get good information. Where I go is my team. I've surrounded, like I said, the thing that sets me apart from other advisors, and the reason I've seen tremendous success over the last 5 years, is I don't pretend to be the person on the corner that has all the good ideas. Like, I'm not the know-it-all. I'm not the person that knows everything about the stock market and financial analysis and deep-rooted things like that. But what I do know is the people that love doing that and have dedicated their entire life to do that kind of thing. And so I've surrounded myself with them and built trusted relationships. And that's what I bring to bear on behalf of my clients, is those unique relationships with, I mean, they look at everything, all the things that companies like BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager, they manage $7.1 trillion. I mean, clearly they have a little bit of pulse on what's going on in the economy. And so whatever information that they're kind of saying, it should be something that you should listen to. And if you have a question about it, then you have a conversation with your advisor. And so you really get this unique, tailored solution versus this, oh my gosh, buy Apple stock, it'll never be this low again sort of thing. It's like, what if you're not in a good position to buy Apple stock, right? Then why would you do that? And so that's, once again, I just keep talking about the importance of having a plan and how COVID-19 really just forces us to look at those blind spots. And, if you don't have a plan, just simply reach out to someone like myself or someone that you trust with money that can really help get you aligned and connected with the kind of people that can help you make those decisions. It's a lot more simple than you might think.
Mm. That really makes sense. So what I'm hearing is we need a team, and that's the best way to be educated, because nobody can be a complete subject matter expert on every subject matter out there that there is, right? And so go with people that you trust and get their third-party counsel to guide you. And I see that a lot too, in my industry of coaching. That's why people, for example, like myself, exist, because it's impossible for any one person to be an expert and know about their relationships, their finance, their career, their kids, and all these other areas of their life that are moving in pieces. So having someone look at it from the outside, from kind of an objective point of view, and see what would be the best plan to put together on an individual basis is something that I do all the time, for people in coaching. And I agree with you that it would blow your mind if you try to figure out everything by yourself and solve every problem on your own, which is precisely why we seek counsel with professionals who have expertise in those areas. And I hear that that's what you're saying we should really do in finance too, right?
Yes. I mean, it's many people don't get into the industry because they've either been hurt before, typically by like an unsolicited friend that just needed help, or they maybe got into, the thing that I see the most is a lot of people go after college into like insurance sales. And not that insurance is good or bad, but people place business on people, and then they don't create a relationship with those people and understand even why that insurance was necessary or not necessary. And so those kind of, I just was using insurance as an example because every one of us probably has gotten a phone call from Northwestern Mutual or some company. And by the way, I take those phone calls because I like to hear what they have to say. And so I'm like, please give me your pitch. Why not hear it? Why not listen? Why not understand what your company is offering? And then I usually have a little bit of coaching about the call.
Oh, well, Brett, can you give us some guidance, some action moving forward? Like, what would be your top 2 or 3 suggestions of what we should all be doing with our money right now?
So once again, touching back to getting organized and getting the plan in place. Even if you're working with an advisor already, I would challenge you to question yourself if you trust your current advisor enough to get a second opinion. And that may be a tough question for you to answer. However, that's really good because that's having another career industry expert, and you can even let them know. Double check their work. And if there's something missing, like, wouldn't you want to know? Like, why wait, right? Like, this coronavirus pandemic has really, like I said, forced us to see into the blind spots of our life, probably making a lot of us very uncomfortable, whether it's with money, relationships, food, exercise, like whatever it is, it's probably illuminated itself during these times. And so it's important to have that plan in place, and not just a plan and it's done, but like, your plan, and every quarter or every month or whatever is healthy for your money psychology. Some people shouldn't look at their money, more than once a year, right? Because it would drive them crazy and actually derail them from doing what they're good at. And so like that, like when we talk about the energy and money, I'm like, if you want to produce more money in your life, then you need to focus on something, whatever it is you're passionate about. Because that is what's going to, and then how can I make money from doing that thing? Because that's what's actually going to draw people to you. And then you provide a service that's elite, that's amazing, that hasn't been offered in the world before. And what you end up with is a life that you love living versus a life that you feel like you have to live to do this thing, to perform a certain way, to, we live in America. Like, I think we all do. Is there anybody from out here?
Sassoon lives in America, but she's calling in from Mexico right now.
Okay, cool. It doesn't matter, but most of us live in America, and America is like literally the land of opportunity. And especially if you live in Houston, like the distribution industries, the healthcare industries, and you might have seen things on the news like nurses getting laid off and all this stuff, but there are industries that are thriving right now because of what is going on. And so if you are yourself in a situation where you're having to find what it is you're passionate about, like maybe you're actually more aligned with someone that needs your help right now than you may have ever even realized. And so it's taking a look at that. So getting a plan, getting familiar with your money, and approach money with a mindset of abundance, not scarcity. Always. That could look as simple as carrying $100 bill in your wallet so you feel rich, or buying yourself a nice pair of shoes so that you have that, literally like that pep in your step. Find that thing that really makes you feel like empowered and alive and thriving, even if you on the back burner you're taking care of $100,000, $200,000 worth of student loan debt, a mortgage, kids' education, credit card debt. All that stuff in the background is not going to change if you don't focus your energy on moving forward.
Wow, that is so powerful. Brett, if you have a few moments, we've been getting some questions in the chat box. And so I'd like to open the floor a little bit to some Q&A before we wrap up. Does that work for you?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So we have a question from Carl. Carl, if you're still on the call, I will unmute you and let you ask the question yourself. Otherwise, I can read it from the chat box. So Carl, if you're still here, you can join us.
So I can just read it so that.
Okay, perfect.
So that and we can unmute people here in a little bit so that we
can. Great.
But Carl's question to me was, do you have any good information for refinancing mortgage at better rates and making savings there? Two really important things here. What Carl's looking to see is there's a lot of people right now, because interest rates are so low, that are targeting people that are homeowners, giving them better rates on their mortgage. Similar to financial advice from your parents likely also had a different type of mortgage structure in their life, and it was likely a 15 or 10-year mortgage. The reason being is that their interest was between 10 and 20%. Now, since mortgage rates are so low, you need to be really careful and look and read in between the lines, because unless you're going to live in the same house for that long, why would you put yourself in a hard position by shortening your mortgage to 15 years, right? And so the key here is cash flow. The underlying thing is cash flow. So what you want to, part of your plan is knowing what your spending plan is. Some people call it a budget. I don't ever use that word and because it's just like a diet. It doesn't work. No, I'll never put a client on a budget, but I'll say, this is what you're spending. Let's come up with a good spending plan so you know how much you can save. How much you can save is how much you can invest. And so this could be a good way to capture some savings and cash flow for people that are in mortgages that may have been, just depending on their situation. So everybody's situation with mortgages and money is different, and there should be no blanket advice given around those two topics ever.
We have another question in the chat box, and that is, Brett, any advice on how people with small money can invest and take advantage of the current economic situation? So any advice for the newbies, or if you just have a small lump sum?
Yeah, so since everyone on this call is going to be wildly rich and abundant someday, my advice to the newbie investors per se is to get into some sort of plan that plays into that creates a tax play for you. And so those and depending on if you have kids, there's so many different investment vehicles, Maurielle, that it's hard for me to give any investment advice. And like my commitment actually to my clients and to this world is to never be giving blanket investment advice. What I will show people after I understand their plan is a direction of where to go, and some simple things like might be a Roth IRA, whole life insurance policy. These kind of things are like really long-term plays, but a good solid place where you know that your money can grow tax deferred and has different bells and whistles to it that really can get you through any type of challenging situation. And once again, those aren't recommendations. Those are just examples of different tools that you can use to grow your money. Anytime that the word invest is thrown out there, just always remind yourself that it means speculation. So invest means speculation, and so you want to be really careful in what you're investing in, because there's a chance you may not ever get that money back. It's not likely in today's world, but you have to be prepared for those kind of things.
I love how you are very strict on not giving just generalized blanket advice, and that you encourage people to really seek individual counsel and get something specific that's going to honor their money and their goals. I see that a lot out there, not just in the financial industry, the selling of kind of blanket advice, but even in my own industry, the coaching industry, whether it's you're scrolling through Instagram or on YouTube, or you're attending, some of these bigger workshops, there's a lot of people out there that try to give generic advice, and it doesn't necessarily apply if you're receiving that advice to your personal situation. Which is why even with myself, when people ask me questions about their general life path chart because they read something in a magazine or Googled it on the internet, I really try not to just give that blanket generalization, because I know the pitfalls and the dangers of that, which is why I too always encourage people to seek individual consultation when it comes to their life path chart and really get the coaching that applies to them, not just a blanket group of the population that has some common characteristic to them. So I love that you have the integrity of resisting the urge to just give blanket advice because it's popular, and really trying to give people stuff that honors their individuality and their specific financial plan. That's great.
Yeah, and some of I've gotten pretty hard feedback around that, like you're really hard to work with, or like, you act like you know it all, and I'm like, I don't act like that at all. My key is that I'm disciplined, because what I understand, like in my head, I have it made up that at the end of your life, you want to have 3 people that have your back. You want to be good with whatever God you believe in. So you're like religion, spirituality, whatever it is. You want to be good with your doctor, the person, your health, and you want to make sure that your money is taken care of. Because if one of those 3 things are out of line, like your life is just not going to go well. And it all starts from health. Like if you're not healthy, then you can't create the abundance that you need to generate money, to invest and live life with. It's all connected.
It is all connected. It goes back to what you said about the energy of money. And we do have another question in the chat box, and I just want to remind everyone that if you have individual questions, just type them in the chat box and I will filter them out to Brett. So someone else has asked, can you briefly describe some of the qualifications and perspective of your team?
That's a really good question. So our team, I shouldn't say our team. So my team is comprised, so I'm not with anyone specific, meaning I don't earn a specific salary from an organization based on products that I sell. And so how I position myself is being the nucleus of a spider web of practitioners across all sorts of different financial services. And I've aligned myself with those people so that if someone comes to me that has a specific question, I already have a trusted resource for that person to go meet with. And because all these people within my, you call it a spider web, do business in certain areas, they actually know how and why each other work in the capacity that they do. And so there's this built-in respect, and there's this built-in continuity and congruency with everything, all the advice that gets given, where you're not overstepping boundaries. And that's kind of what makes my team what it is. In terms of qualifications, obviously, if you're going to be a financial professional, you need to be licensed, and there's several different licenses that you can get out there, depending on what specific thing you want to do, or what service you want to provide.
And Brett, a final question for us today is, can you give us a prospective guesstimation on how long the timeline is for a recession like this to last? Like with pandemics, the prospective timeline that we hear floating around is that they on average last between 12 to 18 months. And I know that the pandemic is separate from the economy situation, but they are kind of intertwined. So in your experience, when you look at historical cycles, what is the approximate timeline that sounds somewhat realistic to you?
So we're undergoing like a tremendous rebalancing across all industries, and technology is illuminating in a way that it never has. And in my opinion, the world is healing in a way that it never has because of industries and people that may or may not be doing things that are just ruining our beautiful earth, right? And so I'm thinking that, like, this is just my opinion, that it's going to take like 1 to 3 years before we really do see a tremendous rise in economic progression. That doesn't mean that we're all going to suffer for 1 to 3 years. What it means is that we will be rebalancing, and different sectors and different opportunities will start showing up. And that's why you want to, once again, have a plan and have a team and know when the time is right to make the decisions that you need to, the right decisions that you need to with your money.
I want to add to what you said about your perspective of the timeline and tell you what I see from my desk when I kind of look at the chart, particularly of the United States and how that could play out for us. So to set the stage conceptually is 2020 we're going to keep an eye on one of the big power players in the sky, and that is the position of Pluto. And for the United States, like we mentioned before, we are at the beginning of what's called our Pluto return. It means that this power figure is returning to its point of origination when the country was founded in 1776. And so we're undergoing this transformational time, particularly in the United States, where we're having to reconsider our values, what we stand for, and what we're going to stand on in the future. The sector that this is affecting the United States' chart is specifically the money sector. So we are seeing that we're playing these things out through a transformation of the economy. So really, I think a lot of this year is about financial power, but underneath that, it's about our values. Because money, as Brett was describing earlier, money is really an energy. So where we spend money and how we spend it and who we spend it with is really a reflection of our inner values. And so on a personal level, I think a lot of people are trying to realign their values and see not just where they're spending their money, but also where they're spending their time, where they're spending their emotions and their dedication in other areas of their life, such as their career and their relationships. They're really trying to reconfigure what matters to them. And it's taken a crisis to kind of push us all over the edge to do that rather than staying in our comfort zone. The other thing is that this year and for the next few years, Pluto is in the location of the sky that's associated with Earth. So it's in the direction of Capricorn, and Earth energy is all about business, government, and resources. So again, a lot of changes in business, government, and our geological resources are coming to the forefront, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Now, it's interesting because these trends actually started in 2019. We got little inklings of this economic shift, and we got little inklings of some big businesses being splashed on the news because they weren't doing the right thing. And we got some inklings of environmental and resource change because we were seeing things that were happening in Australia and in the Amazon and so on and so forth. But then 2020 really hit, and pretty early in the year, it all came to a head. Now, relative to the timeline and kind of watching how the power player Pluto moves through this cycle, is the first time Pluto made its big debut this year in the chart of the United States was on January 12th. Well, if you Google January 12th, what happened then? That was when we got the first reported death of COVID, right? So Pluto came big onto the stage and brought immediate transformation and was like knocking on the front door saying, here comes the waterfall, right? The next big time that Pluto made a move was around April 4th. Well, what was supposed to happen around April 4th in the United States? That was when the administration was originally hoping to be able to lift some of the isolation bans. And then that timeline got pushed back. Well, guess why we're hosting this masterclass today, this weekend, is of course because Pluto's making another big move in the sky. Pluto is actually going to go retrograde or reverse for a few months into the fall. And that means Pluto's going to backtrack and look at the issues that have arisen since earlier this year when it started its passageway. And it's going to say to us, not so fast. There's actually a few kinks we need to work out. There's still some things that need to come to the surface. There's still some improvement that needs to be made. So we're not going to get to rush from today to the future that we want to have. We've got to really dig in and do the work. And so what's hanging out there in the news is in 2 days, states are starting to reopen, right? So again, whenever Pluto makes this big move, we see that there's news around where our economy and the virus is going. So I think though that what this means is because Pluto is going retrograde or reverse for a couple of months, I would invite all of us to curb our enthusiasm just a little bit as we start being gently let out of quarantine, because this could mean that we're revisiting issues that haven't really been wrapped up regarding our health and regarding how we're going to safely get the economy back on track. So I know everyone's excited. We've all got our masks. We're like, Monday's coming and we're going to start being able to safely get out there. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done into the fall. Coming up in May and June, there's probably going to be a lot of excitement about some areas and some businesses being able to go back to a bit of normalcy. And honestly, I think it's a bit of false excitement because a couple other planets are going to go retrograde, particularly Venus, which symbolizes money during that time. So it seems to be that in May and June, we get a little freedom and we get a little enthusiasm, but we don't want to overkill it because we've got a little more work to do, and some news is going to start coming out in July, August, and September. So all of a sudden, we fast forward to the end of June. There's kind of 2 dates in June that stick out to me. One is going to be around June 5th. So, June 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere in there. There could be an announcement, another one about the future direction of our country, and one that's probably a little bit hopeful, but then we may find out counter news later. And then that counter news may come closer to the 30th of June when we realize, oh, maybe we didn't take everything into consideration before we made that earlier June announcement. So there's going to be just a little bit of backtracking. July, of course, is our country's birthday. So we could anticipate that the leadership of this country during a time of crisis and wanting to instill hope in its people may have an important announcement somewhere between the 1st and the 4th of July. And so we'll have to wait and hear what that is. But realistically, I think we should plan for the possibility of the second wave of the virus starting to come in around September through October and November into the election period, because Mars, the planet of health and well-being as well as action, is going to take its retrograde cycle. So, we'll have to listen to what the medical professionals are saying, but I think it's very possible with the information that has been shared about how pandemics tend to come through and then they recede for a little bit and then they kind of have a second push, that projection could potentially be realistic. So we may need to be cautious that in September, October, and November, there could be a relapse of the pandemic, although probably not as bad as the first time, but that will also cause our economy to slow down again because the government will probably try to do the right thing by keeping people isolated to preserve their health during that time. Election is going to be very interesting because we have a Mercury retrograde cycle on election day, November 3rd, and around that time. So I don't think it'll be an easy election, especially if we have some people in quarantine, maybe some people out. How are we logistically going to empower everyone to vote and contribute to their country during that time? So there could have to be an alternative method that's put into place. And then really when the skies start to begin to clear a bit is right at the end of this year, closer to Christmas time, around December 21st through 25th, it seems like that will be the first parting of the winds where we actually feel like there is true freedom and movement going forward. So maybe a vaccine is announced around that time, or maybe a more sophisticated testing capacity is announced at that time. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, it sounds like this year just goes on and there's not really major progress in terms of my personal freedom or career, then you're listening correctly and you haven't misunderstood me. So the truth is that 2020, the reason it is so complex from a cyclical perspective is that we have a lot of anomalous factors that don't typically all happen at the same time, happening at the same time. So this really does carry us through the end of the year and right up literally till holiday season, kind of Christmas time, New Year's. Now the good news is that in 2021, things do, from a cyclical perspective, get a little easier. I think that we're still going to be obviously dealing with the reverberations of this in 2021, but it won't be as difficult because I think by then it will be more clearly understood. And we will have better response mechanisms in place because quite frankly, we need time. This is an unheard of, unprecedented experience. And so we can't think that we're going to come up with a solution overnight for everyone's convenience. So into next year, it does get a little better. And what I would encourage everyone to do is realize that this too shall pass and we will all survive. And in some ways, our lives can be better for it if we are taking control of what we actually have control of. So nobody in this class has control over the COVID virus, and nobody in this class has control over the government. But we do have control over our own lives and the things that we want to work on in the meantime, whether it's our relationships, our careers, our finances, our health. And if we can focus our action in those areas in a way that's personally suitable for each of us individually, we will discover that by the end of the year, when these bigger decisions are being made for us and leading us into the future, that we feel more prepared to step into it and we feel less frightened. And I do think that 2021 has a lot more hope. And I really think that 2021 is kind of like year zero, if you will, meaning that that will be the time when really the big transition that we're all in the middle of and nobody has a clear grasp on yet will begin to clear, and we can start rebuilding our lives and stepping into unknown happiness that awaits us always outside of just a crisis. So Brett, I wanted to add that in conjunction to what you were saying, and I would also like to add, is there anything else that you can leave us with before we close our class today?
No, that was really good. That was really good perspective, and that's something that I've never heard. And so it's interesting to see how coincidental or how those things are so aligned. And it's really, I think, important to what you said, to meet with someone like yourself to understand like what's kind of universally out of your control, so you can understand what seasons of life you may have to go navigate through. so that you can make a plan to weather that storm or that season.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful way that you put it, which is everything is cyclical. And I know that you see that when studying finance and the economy. And certainly from my desk, when I study different alignments, I see that things too are cyclical. And so, you know, life is a season, life is a cycle. We are collectively all sharing this cycle together, but it does mean something to each of us individually and personally. And part of our mission is to figure out what it means for me as an individual, right? And what can I be taking control of in my life? And, you know, one of the biggest things that people always want to have control over and that gives them confidence is their resources. And so I think it was the perfect way for us to start this masterclass series with you, Brett, here today to give us guidance on how to align our values around our resources and to give us the confidence in taking action on that, right? To not live in fear, and it's better to start small than do nothing at all, because then we might miss an opportunity. And I see that with my clients all the time too, you know, who book sessions with me is, you know, just by coming in and just by being willing to make a plan and to create a team around you, you're already one step closer to the control and the empowerment that you want to have in your life. So with that being said, Brett, thank you for this wonderful kickoff to our masterclass today. Let me give the class a little bit of a heads up of what we have coming up next. So in our masterclass series, of which Brett was kindly the debut superstar, we are going to be addressing a variety of business topics that will hopefully be relevant to your personal and professional journey. So we have coming up next in our masterclass series, the digital diary of how to get your business online during a time of mandated isolation. And for that, we will have the president of the Crescent Creative Group joining us, and she will explain to each of us how to either take our company into the digital space, what platforms are good for us, how to do it on social media, what you should pay for, what you should not. And then even if you're just an individual professional, how to get, let's say, your professional resume or website about the type of work and expertise you provide out there on the internet, because of course, it might be a little bit longer before any of us are able to return to our regular offices. So this will be good for us to know how to do effectively. And then we will, after that, be doing a real estate masterclass. And that will feature Compass Real Estate executives Haley Garcia and Darren Morris, I believe, who are actually both on this call. And they're going to give us insight into what both buyers, sellers, and renters should be doing during the economic times that we're in. And then we're also going to do a relationship rescue masterclass with legal counsel and family law attorney Cindy Hyde. She is the legal counsel at Love, Money, and the Law, and author of a very popular book, which some of you may have read, titled Should I Stay or Should I Leave? And so she will be guiding us from both a counseling perspective as well as a legal perspective on what we should be doing in our relationships now to preserve them, or if necessary, exit them in the healthiest way possible. And Brett, as a segue from our masterclass today, I also have a group coaching session coming up 2 weekends from now on Saturday, May 9th from 1 to 3 p.m. So if you attended this masterclass, you got to hear Brett's amazing expertise from the marketplace about things that we should be looking at to earn an income and protect our savings and invest wisely. And so I have prepared a group coaching session for those of us who wish to participate, where we're going to find out the money maker in your life path chart. So in that class, 2 Saturdays from now, you will learn how to identify the money maker in your life path chart, what activities are most profitable for you, what industries you should be in, what type of client your life path chart indicates you would best serve. And then also, I will give you some personal insight into your life path chart relative to the financial periods that appear to indicate some profitability for you, as well as the cautionary financial periods of when I think you should hold back or wait on investing or launching a product or service. So if you are interested in getting your personal life path chart looked at and learning and getting some individual counsel, that will be 2 Saturdays from now. So Brett, I would like to close with a huge thank you and gratitude for being on with us today, for kicking off our masterclass series, and for really teaching us about the energy of money. I think what we all left with is the realization that the biggest thing we need to do is take action. And we need to have a plan in place and the proper team of experts to help guide us through that plan, and that it's okay to start small. And in fact, the biggest mistake is when people just don't start at all. And that if we don't take action, even during the 2020 economic crisis, we could still be missing out on an opportunity to grow our abundance and prosperity levels. And the biggest thing I think you left us with is to not give in to fear. Whether it's fear of what we see happening in the news with the economy, or just a personal fear of talking to someone about money. Don't give in to the fear. Turn it into capitalizing on your energy and create the abundance around your values and just take action on it. So Brett, thank you so much for joining us today with that wisdom. And to everyone who came out for our first masterclass, I hope to see you in either one of our next masterclass series or at our group coaching session 2 Saturdays from now. With that being said, howdy and adios from Houston.